we were fortunate to have Steve Scher and Patrick Booth actually present at our annual retreat last summer. And their talk really resonated with us. And so I'm excited to welcome them back to speak to all of you this morning on beliefs, actions, and goals. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Steve and Patrick for several years. And to give you some background, so Steve is the vice president of the Impact of Leadership. He is a husband of 14 years, father of 4 kids, ranging in age from 6 to 12 years old, has held roles in sales leadership for over a decade, and he loves connecting people to people and people to ideas. And Patrick is the Chief Executive Officer of the Impact of Leadership, as well as the CEO of CCB Technology, based here in Wisconsin. For nearly 3 decades, CCB has provided nonprofit organizations and businesses nationwide with comprehensive licensing solutions and professional IT services. And on a non-professional note, Patrick is a very proud youth football coach. And if you have time, sometime he would love to tell you about this season. So anyway, welcome Steve and Patrick, and we will turn things over to you guys.
Thank you. And just want to make sure that, did everybody hear me okay? Right?
Yes.
Thumbs up anywhere? Okay, good. So Patrick, were you able to get in?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Gotcha. Yep. Gotcha. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. So that you can let me know. Everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You got it? Okay, cool. All right, well, we were so glad to be with you all. We feel it is an honor to be together, even if it's virtually. Our hope is that you gain some value from this time together. So our interpretation of value isn't just that you learn something, but that there's something, a practical application to take back to your business life and your personal life, because we think that the whole person matters. And thank you for the introduction, Ashley. It has been, so it's just a joy to do what we do, and it's fun to do things like this. So at any point throughout, if you want to interrupt, please do. You can, if you put something in the chat, I'll have to have somebody else kind of hit me up. But if you have things that you want to say to us, just jump in and let us know. So our time together, I like to set expectations. So the would it be actually, Patrick, is my video or the template choppy?
Your video is choppy, but the video with your presentation is fine.
Okay, let me I'm going to turn off my video just to see if that helps. And then I'll turn it back on in a little bit, but because the content is what actually matters, not how much product I put in my hair. So let's do that. All right, so expectations of our time together. We want you all to feel like it matters. I do have a worksheet that we created. We're going to tell some stories, and we're going to do some practical application, not just for us, but for you all. And then we like to collaborate. So we think that the best idea should win. And oftentimes, most times, that comes through someone mentioning an idea, someone else saying, well, what if we tried this? And then all of a sudden you've got a new idea that is better from there. So by the end, we want it to be kind of a so what moment. So what do we do from here? What are we going to do with it? But before we jump into that, there is that was a really good intro that Ashley did for us. But we also want to make sure that there's some credibility behind what we are going to be presenting. We do not present anything that we don't believe in an attempt to live out as best as we possibly can. And we're here to serve you all. So again, interrupt, push back, disagree, engage, lean in, because you're not going to get this time back. So the next less than an hour is going to be a little bit of a whirlwind, but hopefully pertinent to what you all do. And you all should know who's speaking to you. So Patrick, if you have anything else that you want to add outside of the introduction, now's the time, and then I'll jump in and say a few things, and then we'll jump into some of the content. Patrick.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
sorry. Yeah, no, I'm
You can
good.
jump in.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think personally, I just want to say thank you as well for being here. We really appreciate it. We know you all have a lot to learn today. Our whole focus is to help give stories and examples to make sure you know you're not alone in all this. Leadership is hard and it can feel lonely at times and overwhelming. And yet, if we can come together and stick together and help encourage each other as in leaders in our roles, and leadership isn't about a title. Steve will always tell you that it's not about a title. It's about showing up every day and making a difference. And people are always watching. So today is all about you. It's all about helping you all grow, and hopefully through some of the things that we've done well and some of the things we haven't done so well and things we've learned, this is going to give you an opportunity on all of us. And every time I get to do a talk, I grow a little bit better. So we're looking forward to engaging with you. So I just want to say thank you for your time. And of course, we'd love to connect with you afterwards. We're on LinkedIn. So that's a great way to reach us. And also, I have no problem giving out my cell phone number. So you can reach me anytime and text me anytime, and I'd be more than happy to connect with you. So that's my heart, but I'll give it back to Steve.
And while I love people like Patrick does, I won't be giving out my cell phone number. So it's nothing personal. It's just, so part of the credibility that I want to mention is Patrick owns two businesses. I know it was mentioned at the beginning, but Patrick is the owner of two businesses, and CCB is a homegrown business. We're not going to stay here, but again, I want to tell you the stuff that we're presenting today is stuff that we live out at CCB Technology and the Impact of Leadership. The Impact of Leadership was born out of a passion to help leaders grow, get connected to other leaders, like-minded leaders, and to have free resources, because you can't just pay for great content all the time. So we have a ton of free stuff that we give to people all over the place. We'll make sure you're aware of that at the end. I partnered with Patrick on everything Impact Leadership related, and then I'm the host of the Impact Leadership podcast. And the whole point of that is to interview leaders who are succeeding, regardless of the tax code of the organization that they work for, or the number of people that they have direct reports, or if they even have direct reports at all. I think no one drifts into excellence. And so it's important to know how other people got to where they are, and then have fun along the way. I think you can do both. You can lead with excellence and have fun. So anyway, let's keep rolling. So I got a certain amount of time. So here's some promises for you all. We can't guarantee the outcome of the talk, but we can promise a few things. We present what we live out, which I already mentioned. Our intent is to stick closely to practical application, because theory is great, but we're not here to bounce theory off of you all and then, write a book or something. This is about how to get better, because growth matters to all of us on this call. One of our core values is fun, the kind of fun when you're with friends and it starts raining, or you're working out with someone you trust. It's not just fun that is like opening up a Christmas present. There's a little bit of resistance in the kind of fun that we're talking about, because that's where growth happens. Growth and comfort, those things are mutually exclusive, which comes to the fourth point, which is if you apply what is presented, we promise that you'll be a better leader. And to reiterate what Patrick said, it's not a title that we're talking about. Leadership equals influence. So we want to help increase your influence. So some of the goals that you will see, and then Ashley, I don't know what's best as far as getting people that attachment that I shot over. It's just a Word document, but if people are able to get that, they can look at it throughout this talk, because it kind of has some areas where they can type in stuff they want, or they can print it off later and scribble. But whether you have that printout in front of you or not, eventually you'll be able to reference back to these goals, because we want you to be able to see possibilities, because there's not a limited number of good ideas. There's a limited number of people who act on good ideas. And we want you to know that you're valued, as Patrick said before, because we believe that each person comes with intrinsic value simply because you all are here. You've been created for a purpose. And that's separate from the value of the role that you're in. We think that you as a person have value. We want you to feel empowered to make decisions. You have permission. You have permission to win. You're not stuck. There's a third and a fifth and a sixth option out there. We want you to feel that. And we want you to do it. So to take action on this stuff that you're going to hear. So take a risk. It might not work out. Move on something that was sparked today. That's some of our hopes. And again, interrupt at any point if you need to or if you want to. So I think we definitely both believe that definitions matter, and we want to know what we're all talking about, because it doesn't matter if we're using similar terms, but if we don't know what it is that where we're going, it's just going to be a bunch of words and then nothing. Nothing's really going to be of substance is going to be accomplished. So Lyle Wells, I mentioned the podcast before. Lyle Wells is a gentleman that I've had on the podcast twice. And a little bit of background on him. He's a coach, like a coach for leaders. He does a lot with 360 reviews, if you're familiar with that at all. And he has done a ton of actual coaching of athletes in the collegiate level and D1 level. And he's worked with famous coaches in the NFL and things like that. So I was fortunate to get him on the podcast. And episode 67 is titled Lifelong Leadership Growth. And that's what sparked this talk. So the quotes from Lyle are well thought out and gold. And one of the things that he says in that episode is, show me your actions and I'll show you your beliefs. I'll say that one more time. Show me your actions and I'll show you your beliefs. The quote that's on the screen there is a simple one, but it's not easy. So aligning your actions with your beliefs is the way to get the desired results, which is essentially the punchline of this talk. Here's some practical examples. If we believe, like one of CCB's customers, American Academy of Pediatrics, if we believe healthy babies are important, we probably shouldn't smoke cigarettes in the car with them. American Academy of Pediatrics would say that. If we believe, us on this call, if we believe family time is more important than social media, then we probably shouldn't be on our phones so much during dinner. So to simplify it, and it's kind of kitschy, but I want it to stick in your head. If you want to go far, you can see here the highlighted VAR. If you want to go far, you have to set the bar. You got to set the bar high, which is aligning your stated beliefs with your actions to get desired results. If you think about this personally, and if you want to answer it, you can out loud and unmute. Where is it that you're not seeing desired results? This is more internally, but if you want to say something, you can. Desired results. Where is it that you're not seeing desired results in the workplace, on the team that you're on the subcommittee that you lead or that you attend? What does that subcommittee, what does that team, what does your organization believe? So if the desired results aren't happening, what do you all believe? And then where's the delta on your actions? Another practical example, if you're in a boring meeting, what's your role in getting increased engagement in that meeting? Desired results. I want to get value out of this meeting. Beliefs. I think it's important that we're all on the same page. Actions. Faking like you're paying attention. Simple application, but if you're in the room, there's a point. All right. Any questions so far? I can't see everybody's face. Actually, I might be able to now. Any questions so far? Any hands digitally raised? Pause for a minute. Okay. Now, throughout our time together, I'm going to pass it back over to Patrick, and he's going to highlight some of the, he's going to take this theory and make it practical from highlighting stories in his work history. So this is one of those times. So pass it over to Patrick. Take it from here, sir.
Thanks, Steve. So hopefully my video is coming through okay. Can everyone see me without it being choppy? Somebody give me a thumbs up. All right, there it is. Okay, good. So yeah, story time. I could park here for a while. Thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate that. I could park here for a while and tell you all sorts of stories. It's how Steve and I work together. Steve is the guy that has all the details and all the prep, and I show up with stories. But we all have a role to play. So how do we align our beliefs and our actions and our results? A couple things. It was mentioned, I coach football. I coach youth football. I coach third and fourth graders because my son is on the team. Well, every time in practice, we always say, and I did, practice is now over, but what I've said is, guys, we win our game not on Saturday when we show up. We win our game every practice we show up. Every day we get prepared, ready to get ready for the game on Saturday. But you can say you want to win. You can say you want to be great. Prove it. And Steve taught me that. He'll say it all the time to me in a meeting. Like if I'll say something and he doesn't do it to be mean, he's just like, prove it. And it's true. Like your actions have to line up with your words. So when I was in high school, family business, CCB Technology is an IT managed service provider, which means we just help do all the IT for businesses so they can focus on their mission. My dad pulled me in high school and said, Patrick, I got to tell you about a deal that could make me $1 million, but it's illegal according to the standards that we've been told to work within. And I'm looking at him, kid in high school. And I'm like, $1 million? I mean, he could have said $1 billion and I would have had the same reaction. And I said, what do you mean it's illegal? And he's like, well, we have these parameters of what we have to work in. And I could take the deal right now. And I don't know if anybody would ever know. And this guy's pressuring me right now to take this deal. But Patrick, here's the problem. One of my core values personally is integrity. So I looked at him and I'm like, why are you telling me this? I'm in high school. And he's like, because I want you, A, to hold me accountable, that I'm tempted to say yes, but I know it's the wrong thing to do. And then second, I want you to learn from this. So he didn't take the deal that would have made $1 million. This is back in, I'm going to date myself, but it was in the mid 1990s. All right. I'll tell you that. And get this, fast forward years later, I'm vice president of sales. No, actually at that time I was executive vice president, and my vice president of sales came to me and said, Patrick, we have a deal to make $300,000 in profit, but it's illegal according to the standards. Oh, I've seen this story before when I was in high school with my dad. So it took me a whole 3 seconds to say, we're not taking the deal. And my vice president said, that's what I thought, but I had to tell you because you're my boss. And he goes, why did you make that decision so fast? And I said, it's easy. I've already seen this before. My dad modeled this before me, and I told him about the story that he didn't know about. You see, our core values at CCB is passion, accountability, trust, integrity, and growth focused. In this moment, I had to decide if I was going to live up to my beliefs, and my actions were going to decide. Sure, could we have used $300,000 in profit? Absolutely. Could my dad have used $1 million? Absolutely. But my dad's beliefs and actions and results prepared me for the moment. So I want to encourage all of you, as Steve already gave great examples in your personal life, in your business life, you're going to be tested as well. You're going to be, every day is an opportunity to show what you believe. Your actions will stand behind those beliefs, and your results and your reputation will be determined by all those other things. So beliefs, actions, and results are all together. So as he said, setting the bar. I'm just thankful that I had somebody mentoring me above me, giving me wisdom, that I didn't have to, like, in that moment, figure it out for myself. I kind of already knew what I needed to do because somebody had lived that example before me. And being that it was my dad, but also a man that mentored me in business, it really applied. So I just want to encourage you that every day you have an opportunity to show what you believe, and people are watching. There's a phrase, If you don't get anything out of this, anything else, I hope you get out of this. More is caught than taught. People are watching you. People are wondering how you're going to lead by just watching you. You don't have to pull them aside and say, hey, this is how to have integrity. This is how to have accountability. You don't have to tell them that. You should, but they're watching you. And then, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't make it always easy. I'm not saying it's always a slam dunk. I just think it's really important that you make sure you know what your personal beliefs are, make sure your actions line up with that, and let the results be what they are. But I think you'll be proud of what comes out of it. So, like I said, I could go on for like another hour of stories, but I've been told
But ain't nobody got time for that.
Nope. All right, Steve, it's back at you. Thank you very much.
Well, we're gonna pull you back in. Two things that Patrick said, a couple of things Patrick said sparked something else I did not have in my notes. I just typed it out so I wouldn't forget. One is he talked about mentorship. That's not a part of this conversation specifically, but I think if you do not have a mentor, get one. If you're not sure how to get one, we have resources for that. If you think you know someone that you kind of might want to approach about being a mentor, we have resources for that as well. I have a blog that I wrote. We have several blogs actually, and we have a couple podcasts about mentorship in general, how to be a great mentee, and from one of my mentors' perspective on what mentorship is. And one thing that he said to me, my mentor, John Nelson, said to me last week, specifically to what Patrick talked about, is you can decide what kind of game you're going to have. He's a football coach as well. You can decide what kind of game you're going to have or what type of employee or boss you're going to be before you get into the moment. You have to decide before you're in the heat of the moment what type of person you are. And so he talks about pre-deciding when he's coaching his kids, just like Patrick was talking about. It's the same thing with us. So we have to pre-decide who we are, what we're all about before we get in the heat of the moment. Anyway, coming back to something that was referenced before. If you haven't yet, I would highly encourage you to go to the chat and find the document that Ashley put in there for me. And you can open that up if you have the capacity to do so. I would encourage you to do that because it would help with engagement, but also it is a central then place to put notes or to reference later on, because I'm going to reference that sheet in a minute here as well, and set my timer and let you guys write some things. So it's important that you all know that we wouldn't ask you to do something that we wouldn't ask you to do something that we wouldn't do ourselves. So Patrick went first with that story. And before we get into this practical exercise, if this doesn't work, it's okay, because it might not. But Brene Brown, she's a fantastic author, coach, speaker, written some wonderful books. And if you're not familiar, the quick snapshot of who she is or what she's known for, I guess, is her research on courage and the interaction with vulnerability. In a word, vulnerability would be her word. And so she speaks on that. So this video that I'm going to show very quickly here, if it doesn't work, if you can't hear it, I'll turn it off and then I'll just give you a recap. But let me jump into this and then we'll come back to how this ties back to the rest of the talk.
So I think the biggest myth about—
I don't know if anybody's gonna be able to hear that. You can?
I think a lot of people were raised to believe that. It was modeled, I think, certainly in our culture. We see that a lot, that to be vulnerable, to be open, to be exposed is to be weak. And the truth is, what I found in my research is that vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, I would argue that it's our greatest measure of courage. When we went out and asked people, what is vulnerability? We heard things like, vulnerability is the first date after my divorce. Vulnerability is starting my own company. Vulnerability is taking responsibility for something that went wrong at work. Vulnerability is sitting with my wife who has stage 3 breast cancer and making plans for our young kids. Vulnerability is taking my business public. The definition I use in my work of vulnerability is simply uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Vulnerability is about the willingness to show up and to be seen, even when there are no guarantees. And it's interesting to me. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, I gave a talk, it's probably a couple of years now, and it was being translated by people doing American Sign Language. And they came up before the talk started and they said, are there any words that you're going to use a lot in your talk that we should know about that or might be different? And I said, well, I use the word vulnerability a lot. And there were two of them, they kind of looked at each other and they said, oh, we do this for vulnerability. And I said, what does that mean? They said, it means weaken the knees. And I'm like, wow, that's not how I talk about vulnerability. And she said, well, there's only one other sign for vulnerability. And I said, what is it? And she said, and I said, oh, that's what I'm talking about. And so to me, vulnerability is our most accurate measure of courage. I mean, it's pretty powerful when I have 13,000 pieces of data collected over 12 years that I cannot find a single incident or story of courage that was not completely underpinned by vulnerability. I think the problem arises that there's so many little paradoxes with vulnerability. And one of them is that vulnerability is courage in you, but weakness in me. When I meet you, it's the first thing I look for in you, but it's the last thing I want to show you in me. And so I think to really put ourselves out there, knowing that if we do that enough, we're going to fail. I just don't think it gets more courageous than that.
She's fantastic. If you haven't checked out Brené's work, I would highly suggest that you do that. If you have Netflix, like most humans now, you can find her. She's got a Netflix special. If you are familiar with YouTube, you can find all kinds of stuff on Brené's research. 13,000 data points to back up the statement that every act of courage is underpinned by vulnerability. And defining vulnerability is going without knowing the result for sure. First date after the divorce, all those examples that she gave. So go to the sheet if you can, if you're able to, if you're willing to, go to that sheet. And there's a couple questions on the sheet. I say the first 5 questions, but answer the first set of questions on that sheet. And actually let me see how much time we got for this. Yeah, go ahead and do the first set of questions, the 5 questions there. I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes. We'll come back and then we'll see how it works. There's a lot of people on the call. I'd love to get some interaction, whether it's in the chat or on the headset. So I'm going to set my timer now, 3 minutes, answer those 5 questions, and we'll come back. I got about 30 seconds left, but most probably are there. Thanks, Carolyn, for the interaction in the chat. I also just put a little note in there that I'll do my best. I've got a couple things open, about 6 right now, but I'm trying to keep an eye on that. So if you have questions, pushback, comments, you can put them in there. But I would love to hear who's feeling courageous / vulnerable. Anybody else? I know Carolyn jumped in there, so thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to throw anything out as far as the answers to the questions and what?
Yeah, I think Steve, I think Cynthia has a question.
Go for it. Oh,
hi,
thanks,
everyone. Good morning. So regarding BAR, belief, action, and result.
Mhm.
Coming from a place of lack, action often requires resources.
Mm.
So I guess my comment is that not everyone has resources in order to conduct the action that hopefully will lead to the result. Not only that, beliefs are not black and white.
Right.
And they change over time. I used to do capital defense investigation, and someone asked me if I would, and I didn't believe in lying in a courtroom, but somebody asked me, Cynthia, a lie or a life? And that was a very powerful question. That ultimately I decided a life was more important than a lie. And I never thought that would be the case. So, beliefs shift regularly, at least for me. Actions often require money. And a lot of people don't have access to those resources. Thank you.
That's good. No, that's good. So Cynthia, if I could, Cynthia, if you're able to, what can be done when money isn't available but a desired result, belief, desired result, the action, hey, we need money. What does that do to moving the mission forward, or the action forward for you all? Does it stop it completely? Because I don't want to just be black and white in that. Does it stop it completely? Do you find another route? What does that look like for you all?
Yes, you try to find another route. And like you mentioned earlier, having a mentor is extremely important. Similarly, but differently, I read a book once about what makes someone a Jeffrey Dahmer or a Pablo Picasso. And it gave various examples. And the answer was one person. So hopefully it doesn't cripple one, but for many people, I think it certainly does.
Yeah. If you had to put this is not fair, but I'm going to ask anyways. If you had to put a percentage so that I have perspective, if you had to put a percentage on the number of what percent of the decisions that are made that we really want to have this happen are tied directly to a lack of funds?
Thankfully, at this moment with our organization, not many, we're doing reasonably well.
That's great. That's encouraging. That's encouraging. Okay. I just know my mentor, he worked in nonprofit and still does nonprofit work for over 20 years. I didn't hear what Cynthia does again. Oh, go for it.
No, only thing I wanted to add was I have not lied in a courtroom. So thank you.
Yeah. There was I think Carolyn was asking, I didn't hear what Cynthia, sorry, Carolyn, were you asking about what Cynthia did when for the court, or what she does currently? There's line of work. So Cynthia, line of work. Yeah, that question came in.
Right now, I manage Neighborhood House of Milwaukee's International Learning Program. And what I was talking about earlier in the courtroom, I don't believe in the death penalty. So I was a capital defense investigator, defending those facing capital murder charges.
Wow. Heavy. Yeah, it's heavy. Thank you for that. Thanks for the engagement, Carolyn. And I think we had Lily as well. I believe good leadership accesses resources around them, skilled volunteers, etc. And yeah, I'm sure if you're like any other nonprofit, there's never too much money or too many volunteers. Of course, that's a broad statement, but thank you for that. So this is good. Hoping to spark ideas. And if you feel stuck in a particular area, we're hoping to wedge you out of that, just even a little bit, to spark something. So this is good. This is good. But I want to keep honor the time, and I want to keep going because there's more content here. Okay. Hopefully the thought was rattling around as you heard Lily's comment, or me read Lily's comment, or Cynthia's story, that what do my actions say about my beliefs? At least that's what I consistently think about when I interview people for the podcast. How does this apply? How am I living up to that? Is that something I aspire to? Is this pie in the sky type stuff, or is this something I can actually take action on? And I hope it was overall encouraging and affirming. As Patrick said at the beginning, you're not alone. We're all humans, and hopefully we're all pulling in the same direction of growth and getting better. So thank you for speaking out. Does anybody else, because this is good. I don't want to cut it off actually before I offer it back up. Does anybody else have anything that they want to jump in on, push back on, questions, comments? We'll keep going. Okay. We don't have to stay there. All right. Back to Patrick, where he's got another story for us about the impact of displaying vulnerability and building trust with the team, because we at CCB and the Impact of Leadership think that the foundation of every functional team is trust, and you build on top of that. So Patrick, I'm going to kick it back over to you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you. Love the engagement. Thanks, Cynthia, for sharing all that. Yeah, you got me stuck in my brain, and it's going to be there for a while. Of a life or a lie. It's in my brain. Like, wow, that's a big, 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 big thing to think about. All right. But my question here is to be able to share with you about vulnerability and what does that mean in building trust with a team. I think if you've been in leadership or any role where eyes are on you, could be at home. The question is, how do you share when things have gone haywire, and how much do you share? And does that create panic or does that create trust? There's a situation, a couple of them that I can share with you where I've personally, and this has not been easy, but I have learned by watching others like Steve show what it means to be courageous when everyone's looking at you, to say the words, I don't know. It doesn't mean you're a weak leader. In fact, I think it's the opposite. You're being honest. You're being truthful. You're telling people, you're being vulnerable, and people can see your heart of, this is the situation. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm here to work with you through it. So my situation is December 7th, 2021. One of my executives resigned with no notice. And she happened to be my VP of finance, which I always had said to her, she's my financial brain. So when she left, all her knowledge went with her. Yikes. Now, a couple things. One, I realized, I'm a terrible leader who did not have notes recorded and processes done, which we are fixing. And two, everyone was looking at me because she reported to me to, how are you going to fix this? Are we getting our paychecks? Are we going to pay our bills? Are we okay? I mean, all the questions were now on me. Talk about feeling like I'm exposed. Oh my gosh. So I pulled the finance team together and I announced it. And you got to love people's reactions. One lady looked at me and said, we're screwed, but she did not use that word. Okay. And I had to look at her and I said, I know that's how you feel right now. And I understand that. But it's my job to make sure that doesn't happen. And she's like, well, how are you going to do that? And I was like, that is a great question. This is my plan, but I can't tell you for sure this plan's going to work. And so I explained that I was out there working with headhunters and trying to find a replacement already. But the bottom line was I had to tell them honestly, this is going to be rough, guys. This is going to be bumpy. And then we had to pull everyone in and say the same thing. This is what happened. This is going to be rough. Patrick, are we going to be okay? I don't know. But I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to be here. I'm not running away. I'm here. If you have questions, come to me. If you have concerns, come to me. Well, then what happened? It wasn't a perfect story. More people resigned in the finance department. It just kept coming. But I can tell you right now, 2 years later, I did the things that I needed to do as a leader, which was one, stay calm. If you panic, everyone will panic. And not saying it's easy, but you got to find a way to put together a plan. And it's not one big swoop. It's a lot of little things that give people security. Everyone wants to feel safe. Everyone wants to feel secure. And you can't do that in one swoop. But what you can do is you can help build trust by communicating well, communicating often, and being vulnerable. Because if you're not, they'll see through it. They'll see right through it, and they'll smell that. And then you've lost the team if you've lost trust. The other one was last year, this year, I'm sorry. This year, my dad passed in February. In the week of his service, I was told 2 days before my dad's funeral, you have to leave the building that you're in. 16 years. And the timing of it was just awful. And my landlord at the time had no interest in hearing the story. This is just business. So I had to tell my company, we'll be moving. Where are we going, Patrick? I have no idea. Are we going fully remote? I have no idea. Are we going to come back to the office? I don't know. You see, at that moment, that would have not been good to lie to them. I, in fact, said, guess what? I can do this all on my own, or I could do this with all of you. You know people. You have connections. Ask people, do you know of a place for us? And sure enough, it was through a friend that gave us a lead to the building we're in now. And it didn't come right away. It didn't come right away, but it did come. And I looked at a bunch of buildings that did not work out. And I told people were curious, like, what are we doing? And there's a sense, I didn't give every update, like, oh, this building was terrible, but I did give updates. We're looking, we're going over here, we're going over there. I did give the communication, but that didn't necessarily give everyone what they wanted. It didn't give me what I wanted. But at the whole time that in those two situations, I learned being honest with the team is you choosing to be vulnerable. It's taking a risk, as Steve said. People always appreciate somebody who's honest. I know I do. I'd rather you just be honest with me than to tell me something just to make me feel good in the moment and then find out later that you weren't telling me the truth. Well, now, can I trust you? And so I know that there's a lot of things we can talk about, but this comes back to, again, one of my core values, which is I want to be honest with people. That doesn't mean that you just say to people rude things that are honest. You still have to do it with love and kindness and respect. But being honest and being vulnerable as a leader is super important. I just want to encourage that. So again, I could stay here giving lots of stories, but I want to give you two real examples of how I've had to grow in the last 2 years. And I'm still growing. I'm still learning how to be vulnerable, and it's hard. It's not easy. Nobody likes being exposed. I don't. But I'll tell you what, your team will really, really cling to you and respect you if you'll be honest with them. So just want to encourage you.
Sharing that, Patrick. I can say as well, as somebody that reports to Patrick, one of the side benefits of us all moving together in the same direction without 100% certainty that everything's going to work out by this deadline is that we were all in it together, and a unique thing took place. Those of us that leaned into the awkwardness of the unknown became closer, and more trusted conversations took place, and our team, the team dynamic deepened. It didn't make things like fixed. We still didn't know where we were going to end up and what we were going to do, but we all were on the same page, following Patrick's lead of candid conversations. Which leads me to another resource that I want to make sure you all know about. It's another podcast. It's free. It's somebody I was able to interview a few times on the podcast. His name is Todd Bolsinger. You might want to check him out. He has over 2 decades of nonprofit work. And the first time that I interviewed him was after I read a book that my mentor, who I mentioned before, handed me. The name of the book is Canoeing the Mountains. And the book itself is really interesting because it parallels the Lewis and Clark expedition. And the point of the book is, what do you do in whatever leadership capacity that you're in? What do you do when the map ends? So paralleling Lewis and Clark, a little bit of history, everything that they knew, every map that they were literally given was wrong. They got to what was supposed to be the Lemhi Pass with their canoes, because they're expert canoeing folks that, navigating waterways. They get there, Lemhi Pass, it's supposed to be water to take them down, and it's not. It's the Rocky Mountains. So now what? Now what do you do? And then so in Todd's book and in the podcasts themselves, at least the first two, part 1 and part 2, it's transformational leadership. And again, this is not tied to your title. It's not tied to your title. This is tied to leadership equaling influence. So transformational leadership requires 3 things, and that's relational congruence. You are who you are regardless of the situation. Technical competence. You know how to do your job. And so if you're a new hire, obviously you got to get acclimated. You got to know what the mission statement is and alignment kind of thing. But relational congruence, technical competence, and then adaptive capacity. So what do you do when the money runs out, but the desire hasn't? what happens when the lease runs out, but the need for a place to house your company remains? What do? Do you freak out? Do you lose your mind? Do you lean into it? So relational congruence, technical competence, adaptive capacity, those are the three circles that commingle. In the middle, you've got transformational leadership. So let's keep moving. I do have my timer going still, about another 10 minutes before we're wrapping up here. This is a phrase from Patrick's dad. I know he was referenced before. We quote Patrick's dad constantly, but so what? And I say that, frankly, it doesn't matter. If you're not applying something from this talk, it's only going to go so far. We filled an hour of time. Hopefully it's more than that. So ask yourself internally, so what? What am I going to do? What am I going to do about it? Because if not, it's basically learning without application is, in my opinion, short-sighted and useless. This is funny. This is not real. At least I hope it's not real. Photoshop thing. It's kind of like a submarine with a screen door. What's the point of that? Well, just let some air in because it's hot in here. Yeah, right. Okay, you're never going to go underwater. So learning without application is a submarine with a screen door. So we wanted to make it real. So I'm going to set my timer again for another 3 minutes to give us a little bit of time for Patrick to tell another story or two, and then we'll close it out with some more practical application. Okay, so 3 minutes on your sheet. How will you use this information? Okay, so write down some stuff that you can as quickly as you can, and then I'll come back to what's on the screen here.
Steve, can you clarify? There's a question in the chat about which piece of information.
Yeah, I was just typing out, but this is probably more efficient. I'm glad you called it out. So thanks, Cynthia, for saying that. There's been a ton. So far, we've talked about the importance of aligning action to beliefs, the power of vulnerability when taking action with uncertain terms, how that can affect your leadership, your influence within your leadership within your sphere of influence, and asking the question, what desired result do you have that isn't taking place? And then how do you align your beliefs with action to that? So the piece of information is kind of a broad term. So it's kind of like fish food. You can come up to the surface and grab that piece of fish food and then come back down. We're leaving it open. So if there is a singular thing that sparked something, that's the thing that we want people to focus in on. So the information that you've heard so far, how would you utilize any of it? Because I don't know what all of your roles are, because it sounds like your role, Cynthia, is going to be much different than someone else that's on the call. So it could be that Cynthia, you're in a position where what you decide can impact somebody's go-to-market for their section of the organization, for volunteer efforts and things like that. Or it could be that the way that you're running meetings, Cynthia, could be increased in opening the meeting with something more personalized than just a punch list of things that we need to get through today, because vulnerability is underpinned by courage, which incites people to trust you a little more. So it's kind of fish food. Many folks don't welcome vulnerability and consider sharing. Yes, correct. Yeah. So this is not a diagnosis of how you all run your organization at all. This is me telling you what Brene Brown found in her detailed research. So that's why I lead with her, because she's the expert. And so I'm quoting an expert saying that every act of courage is underpinned by vulnerability. Not every story that's a tearjerker is underpinned by vulnerability. So just to draw that distinction, I don't think a bleeding heart necessarily equates to courage, if that helps, because it can get muddy. Yeah. But I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you.
Steve, I had a question for Patrick, but I know we're running out of time, so I could always ask it offline. I just wondered, from one of those last stories that Patrick shared, specifically the finance, kind of the mass resignation, what was your biggest takeaway, learning from with having multiple people resign from one department? What did you learn, after that as a leader?
Yeah, great question. Me personally, because the VP of Finance reported to me directly, one of the things that I clearly realized is I did not ask enough questions. having trust with somebody is great, but at what point do you not have an understanding of what that person does and all the details that go into it? In order to make sure everything was running well, I should have been inspecting what I expected. I should have been asking more questions. I was told constantly, this is too complicated. You wouldn't understand. This is an accounting practice. And I accepted that when I shouldn't have. I knew in my heart I deserved to understand. And I just accepted, well, as long as she understands, I just never anticipated that she was going to leave.
Mhm.
And if she did was going to leave, I never thought she was going to leave with no notice. You know, I thought there'd be a transition. The other thing is leadership is so important that the other people resigned because they did not feel safe. They felt as soon as she left, the exposure, they did not think we could recover probably. You know, there was probably some other things, but her influence over them, but also the fact that she was gone and they trusted her, not me, in the sense as a leader. And I understand because she was in the trenches with them every day. There was a breakdown of my involvement and my understanding. I didn't, and I have to accept that I didn't make them feel safe in their roles. Now, I've been a lot more involved ever since. I'm in financial meetings now consistently. The team is being run, though not by me, is being run by our president, Logan McCoy, but they know I'm involved because I ask questions. And that's the biggest thing I would say. My lesson learned is I know it's nice to just give it to somebody and just be like, it's out of sight, out of mind. I got enough on my plate. However, you have to be willing to understand what kind of impact would this have if this person left, and what are you left with if this person is not there? And I think even in your role, what can you do to help your organization be prepared if you ever walk away for some reason, you're not able to come in ever again? Are you leaving your organization exposed? So
Thank you
I think,
very much.
yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yep.
To that, Patrick has brought up internally, and then tying it back to what we say here. If I believe that CCB technology is a fantastic place to work, and I want it to succeed beyond me being here, and I get offered $1.7 bajillion to move to Tahiti and whatever, do I believe CCB should be sustained in the sales and marketing department after I leave? Yes. Is my role, am I prepared to hand my role off to someone else? No. Then what do my actions say about my beliefs if I know that I'm moving to Tahiti? So that kind of a thing has rippled down in between the executive team of knowing somebody's gone, what's the backup plan? So two things I'll highlight, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up. On the ideas for application, 5 dysfunctions of a team, that second bullet point on the right side for Make It Professional. That's a book by Patrick Lencioni. It's a fantastic book. His catalog of resources, Patrick Lencioni, is wonderful. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, he talks about a pyramid, and the base is trust for a functional team. He also has a book called The Ideal Team Player, Humble, Hungry, and Smart. And then the quarterly health check, basically asking questions, and you can bring a third party from the outside, asking questions on the state of the team or the board that you're a part of. So just asking a simple question: are we hitting the mark, or did we just get used to getting these meetings done as quickly as possible? Which leads to this idea for application, because most people don't like meetings. Pat Lencioni has another book called Death by Meeting. A good meeting ends when the questions stop, not when time runs out. Now, I say that as I'm bumping up against the clock and my timer goes off, so I am a hypocrite in this regard, but I want to be respectful of your all time. A couple ways that you can come to have a great meeting. If you're a participant or you're leading it, come armed with questions because you've looked over the notes from the previous meeting, and be specific and clear with open-ended questions as well. And then just allow for that silence. Another couple questions here. You will have access to these slides. If you're doing this self-assessment, it's good if you have a trusted someone else to bounce this off of, but it's not, you don't have to, because it could get kind of awkward. So that second bullet point is just to simply say something my mentor says to me. Someone understands what they're explaining when they can explain it to someone else in simple terms. So if I was going to explain it to my spouse or my kids, what I do at CCB, I'm not going to go into what virtualization is and hyperconvergence and all that other nerd stuff. I'm going to explain that we solve problems and keep bad guys out of people's data. Questions for applications in a group setting. This is just for you to mull over later because we're at the time here. Patrick, since I know you'll forgive me for this, since we're at the time and you gave that last one, I'm gonna bounce past this so that you can see some of the resources here from the impact of leadership. Again, you'll have access to this. This is just a quick little scan through our website. We exist to equip, connect, and grow leaders while having fun. And then again, you'll have access to it, but if you want to take a picture of that or open it up on your phone and push down on it, that will take you to our podcast with over 135 episodes, blogs with over 75, 80 blogs over that. All free stuff. There's paid resources in there as well. And then our social media, because we love to engage with you. We'll make sure that you have this, but overall, we're rooting for you all. We appreciate what you all do, and we're grateful to be a very small part of your day today. So thank you again. Patrick, is there anything else that you would leave?
Yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate the engagement. Thank you. Thanks for the book recommendation, Cynthia, as well. I see that there in the chat. And again, great resources out there from what Steve has given, but also I think you all have great things that you've learned. That's why you're in the roles that you are. So I just really want to say thank you. I appreciate you listening today. And again, we are a little short on time. So if there's anything that you want to discuss further, you can reach out to us on LinkedIn. I promised I'd give my cell phone number, so I'm going to throw that in the chat, and you can text me, preferably not at midnight, but you know what? Hey, if that's what you want to do, I'm good with that too. So you can reach me now on my cell phone. All right. So.
Steve and Patrick, thank you so much. This is, I can promise you all, this is just the tip of the iceberg for, information and resources. So again, since we are out of time and we'll be starting our next session at 10:25, please do reach out to them either, texting at whatever time or on LinkedIn, and they will be sure to follow up with you. So thank you both again for joining us this morning and kicking us off, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate you all.
Pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you.